Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. I'm Jonathan Freedman, and our next guest up needs no introduction. Marc Z Legal Staffing. Always great to see you.
John, always great to see you. Great to be here.
So you've got a interesting sort of topical, as always, right on the cutting edge of what's going on in the world. Tell us a little bit about what you've seen over the last couple of weeks.
Thank you. One of the things, John, that you and I had talked about, we'd started getting into the weeds about it last year when you were talking about just in terms of, because for your consulting business clients, what they were experiencing, and then you and I were comparing notes in terms of our clients and candidates and even our contract employees was stress and dealing with stress, whether it's dealing with COVID at home and just the constant testing.
It's not only work related, it's life related these days.
Right, life related, but life is impacts on work. And that's because on a daily basis, it changes. I mean, whether it's if somebody tested in your family for COVID or you tested for COVID, you might not be able, you can't go to work that day if it's an in-office role, if it's a hospitality role in a restaurant or in a hotel or something that's in-person service, and even if it's not an in-person role, if it's remote, you then have your family that you have to deal with, and you have kids home. So now, because your kids have been exposed to it, and so now you may not be able to do the work and the responsibilities. So you have that. You have the stresses that affects work. I know we have had people who have had COVID. I've had family members that have had COVID. I've had colleagues that have had COVID that are constantly dealing with that. And
I think another element that compounds it is the guidelines, as we know, are vague and fuzzy and changing continuously. And so, not only do you have the stress of dealing with the illness or the sickness that people have, but it's like, what do I do? And people are confused in general.
Right. What do I do? And then, people that I know, even that are very thoughtful that we use, and they say to me, I have an appointment to come over, and they're like, just so you know, I have a family member who tested positive, I've taken this test. So it affects people in their personal life, and then professionally, again, they can't necessarily go to work if they have COVID. How are they feeling? Some people react worse than others. Some people have a lingering cough, and some people are so exhausted, so it affects their job. So, and then firms don't know, and companies don't know. The ones, should we come back now? Do we have people fully in the office? And then there are the firms and companies that say, we need people fully in the office. We need people in their seats, and now they can't get talent because the talent. We had a situation, we had a client that said to us, we need somebody who would work at least partially in the office. And so it was a challenge finding that person. And then ultimately I touched base with him. I said, I'd like to strategize, and he let us know last week that, we've hired somebody as a totally remote person. And I was like, well, you had told us this. Well, we know that, but this person fell in our lap. So places are starting to have to think, even if they don't want to think that way, because the situation is not changing. So that adds more stress to get their people around. When I say get their people, get their partners or get their executives to think, we've got to think of a different schedule, a different way of doing things. And that now wraps on to all this additional stress with, as you probably heard, and people were saying to me, which is we've been experiencing a long thing with this great resignation. So all that stress personally and professionally, and executives and employees and companies has led to one thing that you and I had talked about. What should employers and employees do to deal with that stress? And what you and I were talking about last year, and it was starting to emerge, but now with the new year, companies and firms are putting in place and really looking into mindfulness to help people, or ways for people to deal with stress.
Stress mitigation, stress, addressing stress in the workplace and
Right,
in their lives, and making sure that it's at the forefront and taking strategies to mitigate that stress.
correct.
Yeah,
Because
makes a lot of sense because, you know, healthy minds, healthy people equals better employees.
correct. And
And
it's
you're
not
seeing, sorry, Mark, you're seeing some associations that in the legal industry that are promoting those types of activities.
correct. So I attend regular bars, seminars or meetings in different states, as you know, and those are the issues that are being discussed, and those are some part of some of the programs. Every state is that, and I'm admitted to several bars, but with those states, and then they discuss their colleagues. So I would not be surprised if most state bars are giving the course of mindfulness, or suggesting to the attorneys as part of programs that you should be looking at a diversion of your stress. And so they're actually giving credit. When I say the bar associations that have mandatory continuing legal education, for bar credit, they're giving mindfulness programs and saying, if you attend this, you will get credit toward your continuing legal education.
That's fascinating. I would imagine the industry historically wasn't particularly oriented towards dealing with burnout and stress and things of that nature. So it's probably a 180 degrees, you know, flip from where they historically had been. You know,
Correct. I mean, you've always had, it was something that was maybe not swept under the rug, but you always had, look, if you have any problems at home or personally, call this number, for our bar dues. We contribute to programs that the bar association set up, but they've never addressed it and said, we know all of you have some kind of stress. In other words, they're proactive now. They're putting that out there. They're having, I just attended a Maine bar live seminar for their winter meetings. And they literally had, and I can't tell you, I think they had 100, and Maine's doesn't have as many members as other states, but I think they had at least 100 people in this seminar with other attorneys and people from the bar, people that run the bar, but other attorneys discussing suggestions to help with mindfulness, to help with stress relief programs. And so there are suggestions every day from, if you Google mindfulness, there are programs that are free. There are programs that you can have a subscription. The bar has activities. Every bar that at least the New England bars that I know of have some type of program that they offer to help attorneys with stress remitteration.
It's great. It's great because thinking globally, what we're talking, you're starting to hear the word endemic, and COVID entering an endemic phase. But we may be dealing with a mental health pandemic within the confines of an endemic going on. So
Correct.
It's something that's real. It's something that's impacting a lot of people. You hear from people in the profession, people that are psychiatrists, psychologists that are just overwhelmed with patients that are seeking out treatment. And I think it's also something generationally that has come to the forefront. People are willing to talk about it.
Right.
And
Right.
to seek out the help. So, it's fascinating that the bar associations and the industry groups are starting to recognize it. And, perhaps in the, where are we, 2020 somethings, the new benefit at work will be, mindfulness rooms. And, I think some of the progressive companies already have those types of things, but looking at stress reduction and making sure that people are feeling good and balanced in their professions and their personal lives.
Correct. And many of the law firms downtown, the big law firms, have designated people. If you go to the HR person, they will actually recommend a mindfulness program, and they have people, part of their role, talk about mindfulness or some type of program that could be helpful.
That's great. I would imagine the executive committees need it themselves because they're probably making policy decisions and spending, days and weeks coming up with policies that once they implement them, 24 hours later, they need to pivot to something else. So,
Correct.
it's a world of constant change. So I guess our big picture message is, when you're not feeling the top of your game, seek out the help. And that it's
Correct.
available, within the industries, and there's a lot of emphasis on it. So great,
Right.
great insight as always, Mark. Great advice, great
Thank you.
suggestions.
Thank
If people want to reach out and talk to you more about being on the cutting edge of the legal environment and staffing needs, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
John, first of all, Google Mark Z, M-A-R-C and the letter Z, and we'll come right up, or MARCZ legal.com, marczlegal.com, and 617-338-1300.
Wonderful. This has been a Mark Z moment on Radio Entrepreneurs, and we'll be right back with another segment on Radio Entrepreneurs.